All right. Hello, everyone. Kyle here, AA0Z. Welcome to the channel. And tonight, for the Thursday night stream, I got to scoot over. I am here with Don, WA4MCM. Hello, Don. How are you?
I'm fine. Thanks, Kyle. Good to be here.
Yeah. So I learned, I want to showcase some of the stuff that Don is doing. He's got some really cool things that he is doing in the way of shack automation and making it easier for you to visualize your shack and just, do things that would probably be hard. Normally, Don makes them easy. So one of the things that we had at the contest station is we needed to replace our RCS switches, which are basically 1 in and 4 out. And we were looking around trying to figure out, was there a switch on the market that was 1 in and 4 out that had a bias T associated with it, so you could put the switch at the remote end and switch 4 antennas with 1 coax. And we looked and looked and looked, and I came across Don's info, and Don and I started talking, and after some emails back and forth, we bought one of his switches, and I think we bought 4 because they work so well. So we're going to get into the switches, but first, Don has got a new SWR meter and watt meter that I think is going to be really cool, and it's a kit and it's cheap, and it's really, really neat. So, Don, welcome to the stream. We've got about I don't know, 25, 30 people in the chat on saying hello, and why don't you just introduce yourself? How long you've been a ham, and maybe kind of get into where you fell into the switches and the watt meters, and what niche did it scratch for you?
Okay. All right. Thanks, Kyle. Yeah. So I've been a ham since like my teenage years, back in 1974. So I'm going on just about 50 years as a ham. Of course, down like in the middle, like a lot of guys, I was inactive, when the kids were young and we were moving around a lot. But I got active again about 15, 20 years ago, and while I was still working. My core background is strictly electronics, and ham radio basically started me on my career arc, through the end of high school and then college, and then I ended up working for like 10 years at Norfolk Naval Shipyard in the electronics shop, in their search radar shop. So I guess you could say I've got RF running through my veins. But then I kind of moved over to the IT realm, initially in infrastructure, with servers and data centers, and then strictly into IT management for the last 15 years, almost 20 years of my career. So I kind of got my hands off of I like to have my hands on things, but when you move into management, basically you're kind of I was really itching to get my hands, back onto the electronic side, where I started my career. So when I retired,
Yeah.
Believe it or not, at the very beginning of the COVID pandemic, my wife and I had all these travel plans, and they got kind of shot down for the next couple of years. So I needed something to keep me from going nuts. So I decided to start with teaching myself some new tricks. And back when I was doing fully electronics, microcontrollers were really not a thing then. So I wanted to teach myself how to program microcontrollers. So I did that. I started out with one of those little kits you can get off of eBay. I'm sure everybody's seen one where it comes with all the components that came on a breadboard, and the LEDs and the
Yep.
I'm talking about. And so I taught myself how to program that, and then I needed a project, so I had the need for an 8-position remote antenna switch, because I live in an HOA, and all my antennas are up in the attic, and I didn't want to run eight coaxes up there, so I needed a switch up there. So one thing led to the other, and that was this 8-position antenna switch that you see. And I figured, if I could sell those online, maybe make a few dollars to help pay for my ham radio hobby, and wouldn't have to go asking my the chief financial officer for money all the time. And then it kind of went over pretty well, and I started getting requests for a 4-position switch, and one that wouldn't require a extra control cable. So that led to the design of the 4-position antenna switch, which took a little while, because I'd never designed a bias T box before. So that was an additional skill that was learned. And that was pretty much it for a couple years. I was selling them. I was going to all the ham fests in the area. I went to Hamvention in Dayton, and they sold pretty well. And then I needed something new, so that's when the design of the SWR Wattmeter. I needed to learn how to do graphical programming.
Yep.
For on microcontrollers, and that was the kind of the impetus there, and it worked out pretty well. I actually based the sensor on the old Heathkit HM102, if anybody's familiar with that. That's why I kind of pay homage with the model number of this is the GM102, standing for the graphical meter. And yeah, that's pretty much the whole story.
Yeah. So let's talk about, your first forte into this was your 8-position switch. So let's start there. So this 8-position switch, it's one coax in, which is so first, all of your stuff is a kit, right?
Correct.
You purchase the kit from you, and you put it together, solder it, and there's very detailed instructions on how to put all this stuff together, right?
Exactly. I mean, if you look at the picture there in the lower left-hand corner, that's kind of what you get. You get all the components are in little bags, nicely labeled. The circuit boards are bare. You get the enclosures, all already milled, and in the case of the controller, it's powder coated, and the silk screening is there.
Right.
I'd like to say it's just like the old Heathkits. I kind of cried for a week when Heathkit went out of business, because I think I built pretty much every ham radio kit that Heathkit had. So that was my intention, was to design a kit primarily for first-time kit builders, because it's been a while since kits of this nature have been around. I mean, there are a few out there right now, but I wanted to make everything through-hole, so all the components are through-hole components, so you don't have to worry about surface mount.
Yep.
Although in the SWR Wattmeter, there is some surface mount, but they already come mounted on the circuit board.
Yeah.
But everything's through hole. You also notice that the components are spaced apart fairly well. So people with big thumbs like me won't have any problem getting the components in there. You'll also see that the labeling on there even has the resistor values, so it makes it easier.
Oh yeah.
To not make a mistake and put the wrong resistor in the wrong place.
Right. So if I got the 8-port switch, how long would it probably take me to put it together?
So if you have any experience soldering at all, probably maybe 5 or 6 hours, I would think.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit more, if it's been a while since you put a kit together. But probably 2 sittings of maybe 3 or 4 hours apiece.
Okay.
I would say.
And all of your equipment, even your watt meter, handles up to 1500 watts, right? Full legal.
Correct.
Yeah.
And now the specs on like the relays that are in the antenna switches kind of indicate that they will handle more, but yeah, I'm not able to test it, so I'm going to stay legal on this. But
you need to ship it over to the Italians, and they'll test it for you.
I do. I have sold it to Italians, and I know that they've been hitting it pretty hard, and I'm getting good feedback from them. So no magic smoke release so far, at least not that they've told me.
Yeah. So I have one of the 4-position switches that we haven't put into the contest station here. So let me maybe let's see. We remove this here. So here's the 4-position switch. I know that it's backwards. Sorry, everyone. But there's an on and off button here. And then these are tactile buttons, if you can hear them. And then you've got the mode button here. And we'll get into the different modes here. But I'd kind of like for you to maybe explain the difference between the 8-port and the 4-port, because we were talking about some of the differences on. Right. And then also after that, like, how do these things actually work? You know, like, I'm sure there's probably a bunch of people in the chat, including me, that before I got into it, didn't know what a bias T was and didn't understand that you could send basically a control signal down the same coax as your RF signal and switch antennas at the remote end. So
okay.
Yeah, if you want to just get into, like, the differences between the 8 and the 4, that'd be great. And then we got some questions here in the chat too.
Okay, so real quick, so both the 4-position and the 8-position switches have the same features operationally, right? So they'll both models will remotely switch the your antenna, the remote box. They both will handle will be able to follow band data that you can get out of the back of most radios. So you can program the front from the front panel.
Right. So you can plug. So on the back of this thing, it's got some band data input, and you can basically come right out of your radio and pipe that directly into the band data input DB9 there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll if we get some time to do a demo, I'll show the demo on how to the user can program which antenna goes to which band. I actually have I don't have a long enough cable from my radio, but I do have a simulator that simulates a Yaesu band data. But so both models will support tracking band data, and both models will support an optional USB interface, so you can actually control the switch from your computer, because there's a companion Windows application that comes with the switch, and we can demo that as well. And the big difference between it is the 4-position switch, since it only has four antennas. It has the number of relays where I can actually send the control signal over the coax using that bias T that Kyle was showing earlier.
Yeah.
What it does is when you select antenna number 2, it actually sends the positive half of a 12-volt AC signal, so positive 12 volts up the coax, where there are some bias diodes that direct it to the correct relay. When you select antenna number 3, it sends the negative half of the sine wave up there, where a different bias different bias diode, it's actually reversed, directs that to a different set of relays. And then when you select antenna number 4, it sends the entire sine wave up the coax, so AC. It energizes all of the relays in the relay box. So
it plugs in.
And let me.
So it needs a a 12-volt AC adapter, right? And
Right. And
we
that
have,
comes with the kit.
yep, comes with the kit, and we have plugged this one into the contest station, and we haven't seen zero birdies. It's RF quiet. We have not had any issue with it at all.
Yeah, those are pretty quality wall warts. They're Jamico. I don't know if anybody's used them before. And so they're probably the quietest ones I've ever found, to be honest with you. So I was real happy with those.
TJ has a question. He says, just curious, what microcontroller are you using?
Okay, so the microcontrollers in the antenna switches are the are PICs from Microchip. They're PIC 18F45K40s. There are several in that class that have the same pinout that could be used, and I have swapped them out from time to time depending on the supply chain. About a year ago, it was very tough finding microcontrollers, so I was constantly searching for the 40-pin microcontrollers that I could use.
Gotcha.
So I actually have, and there's slight firmware differences, not worth mentioning, but I have actually 3 versions of the firmware depending on which microcontroller I can source. But for the last year or so, I've been able to get the 45K40s fairly readily.
Gotcha. Okay. And then we're looking here at the back. You've got some more pins here. Just real quick. You've got the band decoder, which is here, and then you've got a USB cable connector. That's an A. It's
a B.
B connector, and that goes to the PC. That you've written a piece of software that you can control this via a piece of software.
Right.
And then we've got 12-volt AC. I'm sorry, 12-volt DC.
No, 12 volts AC. On the 4 position.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, because you rectified the DC. Yep. So 12-volt AC goes in here, and then over here is where you plug the bias T in with another cable that you supply, and that's where you plug in the bias T, right?
Correct.
Gotcha.
So that's the control. That's the actual control signal that I was talking about earlier. So it gets injected onto the coax inside that bias T box.
Gotcha. Okay. Got it. So then you've got some buttons here on the front. You've got obviously the antennas. 1, 2, 3. Is it 1, 2, 3, 4? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you've got the on-off switch, which we always just keep it on the on.
Yeah.
They're always on. And then you've got this mode button over here. What does this mode button do?
Right. So as I was saying, the both switches are capable of following band data out of the back of your radio. So the mode switch actually changes between manual and automatic mode. So the automatic mode is where it will track your band data. Manual mode is just what it says. You punch the button on the front of the box, and it changes the antenna.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. All right, so we covered the 4-port because I've got one here. So what is the difference between the 8-port? Obviously, it's got 4 more positions on it, but what are the differences between the 4 and the 8?
Well, the only difference is that the 8-position switch requires a separate control cable going up to the remote relay box, and it's a 4-conductor cable. It's very inexpensive, like inexpensive telephone cable will work just fine.
Gotcha.
It does not have the bias T, so that's the main difference.
Okay, gotcha. So if you've got, so it does not use the coax, you'll have to run a separate cable to the base of your tower or wherever you've got this antenna, wherever you got one of these, which has 8 positions versus 4.
Correct.
To switch those antennas. Okay.
Yeah, and I get this question a lot, and I know you asked me earlier. Both kits are the same price. How can that be when one's only got 4 antennas and the other one has 8? Well, the added cost of the bias T and the bias T components more than make up for the reduction in relays and RF connectors and buttons. In fact, my cost for the kit components for the 4-position switch is actually 73 cents more than the 8-position switch. Hence, I offer them for the same price.
So it looks like you've got on your website, which is in the link, the description below to Don's website. It's wa4mcmkits.com, and it just brings you up to this one homepage, and he's got all of his stuff here. Both of the 8 and the 4 are $209 plus shipping. So you'll have to figure out. I'm assuming, Don, people contact you and you figure out what the shipping is, and then
exactly. I don't make any money off the shipping, right? So I charge exactly what I get. What it costs me. I use a company, believe it or not, called Pirate Ship, which provides some discounts. Which provides some discounts for UPS and U.S. Postal Service. And typically, I'm on the East Coast. I'm out of Maryland. So typically on the East Coast, it's usually less than $10 to ship the kit. When you go, closer to the Mississippi and west of the Mississippi, it can be upwards of about $15. I think the last one I shipped over to California was about $14.80 or something like that. U.S. Postal Service. So it's not bad on the cost of shipping.
That's cheap.
Yeah, they only weigh 3.5 pounds, or actually 3.25 pounds, and they're in the boxes 12 by 8 or 11 by 8 by 2 inches, 2 inches thick. So it's fairly decent on the shipping size.
And then we're going to get to questions here in a minute. And if you want the optional USB interface, which you want that USB interface, it's $40 more. So total for each one of those kits is $249.
Right, and the USB interface comes fully assembled. So it's basically a daughter board that you add a couple of 8-pin headers to your main circuit board in the controller, and then you just plug the USB interface module in there.
And then I see here SWR less than 2.1 to 1, 160, 1.2 to 1. It's my dyslexia coming out there. 160 through 6 meter, right?
Correct.
Oh, and then 1.5 on the 2 meter band. You could do this for the 2 meter band too.
Yeah. It once you go above 148 megahertz, it starts getting a little more inductive pretty quickly. So above 2 meters, it's really not usable. The insertion loss starts going up, and SWR starts creeping up.
Gotcha. All right. Question here: since the coax is grounded, how do you ensure, or do you need to ensure, your 12-volt wall wart is transformer based, isolated, or have you tried capacitive droppers, which might be tied to AC neutral as ground? So,
well, no, because the 12-volt wall wart is basically it's between it's between neutral and hot, right? And your neutral in your house supply should be tied to ground.
And
so it actually is reference to ground, to the chassis ground on the on both the back of your rig, your coax ground, the shield, let's say, as well as the chassis ground in the switch itself. So yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, TJ, it's a AC 12-volt wall wart. Yep. Right. I said DC. Don corrected me. It's an AC wall wart. And then Don says, where would you put the Paradan remote antenna disconnect? It would be nice if one could disconnect the coax between the switch and the control box. Yeah. So Don, he's talking about, I don't know, Don, if Don, my Don on the screen and Don N5 SKT.
Yep.
We have gone down the rabbit hole of, have you seen those Paradan antenna disconnects? That you apply 12 volts and it unlatches
it's like
the
a big
antenna.
knife switch. Yeah, I've seen those.
So typically, you know, I have always put those, and I've seen people put those inside their shack where their 12 volts is. But I mean, if you can get 12 volts outside, the guy from Paradan told me that those things are fully waterproof. Now, you know, you're going to have to figure out how you're going to get the AC, or I'm sorry, the DC current out there, and then, you know, waterproof your disconnect or whatnot.
Cabling, yeah.
But he told me that whole enclosure is 100% waterproof. But yeah, it's funny how like they tell you, don't bring your lightning arresters inside. Like don't bring Mr. Sparky inside, right?
Yeah, it kind of defeats the purpose, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So it brings up a good point, and I get a lot of questions, you know, when I'm at Hamfest about whether the unused connectors are grounded. So the answer is no, and the main reason is the way these type of switches that use relays the relays are in a binary tree configuration, and I can explain that later if need be, but
yeah.
That's basically to reduce the number of control conductors that you need in order to change the antennas.
Yeah.
So in order to do that, each relay actually services 2 ports, right? So there's a relay for antenna 1 and antenna 2, and it switches between those two. So that being said, you can't really ground the unused antenna. So my argument is you really don't need to ground the unused antennas, because your lightning protection should be where the single coax, which the whole purpose of the remote relay box is to bring one feed line into your shack. The lightning protection should be on that one feed line, you know, before it enters your shack.
Yeah.
So that handles the lightning protection. What you're really protecting against in these you need to protect against in these remote relay boxes is static buildup on the unselected antennas, so that when you change to another antenna, you're not jamming, you know, all that static is built up into the front end of your receiver. So what these relay boxes do is there is a 100 kilo ohm metal oxide resistor between the center conductor of each coax connector to ground, and that's to bleed off the any static that may build up on your unselected antennas. And the 100 k ohm to ground is in parallel with your 50 ohm load, or close to 50 ohms. So it basically has no effect electronically.
Yeah, that's where it stops.
to your characteristic impedance. So one of the side effects, unfortunately, though, is that you don't have the isolation between ports that you would have on a much bigger relay box that uses an individual relay for each antenna, where you can ground, you know, when you're not selecting an antenna, it actually grounds that port. You'll find a lot more, or a lot higher isolation between ports. Hence, you can actually take those relay boxes, you can turn them around, so to speak, and feed multiple radios into a single feed line. These antenna switches were not designed for that. They're designed for one feed line feeding multiple antennas.
Yeah.
So I'm not into that market where you can actually turn it around. Although I have had customers tell me that they do turn it around, and it works okay. I don't recommend it, because if you go above, say, 100 watts output, you really run the risk of damaging the unselected receivers. So you know, I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I think we'll transition into the SWR and Wattmeter. That was kind of the whole point of this stream, but I wanted to cover the switches. Anything else you want to say about your switches, Don?
No. I think I covered pretty much everything. They've been very popular, and basically do exactly what they're supposed to do. And
Yeah.
they'll save you a ton of feed line costs if you've got a fairly long run out to where your antennas are located.
Yeah, we have been using them close to, I don't know. I can't remember when the last when we bought these, probably 5 months ago, 4 months ago, something like
I think
that.
so. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We haven't had one issue with those switches. They've been great. So I highly recommend them. Anytime someone says, hey, what switch should I get? Oh, and we need to mention all of Don's stuff is fully compatible with Node-RED. It is, let me show you my dashboard. So here is my dashboard at the contest station. And over here in the white and blue, those are Don's switches. Those are the 4-port switches. So we've got Tower 1, Tower 2, Tower 3, and they're fully remotable with Node-RED. They're great. And the flow, if you need the flow, let me know. I don't know if the flow is on your website, Don, but
Not yet, no.
okay, just email me and I'll email you the flow. That's not a problem. So let's transition to the graphical SWR and Wattmeter. I have one right here that I purchased from Don at
Dayton.
Dayton. And don't worry, kids, I paid full price for it. All of you trolls out there. Oh, and Kyle got a free Wattmeter to have Don on his show. I paid full price for this. So why don't tell me the need that you had for the Wattmeter, and I've got it here up on the screen if you want to talk a little bit about it. And then everyone's asking for a demo. We're going to get to a demo. I guarantee you. We've got a demo. We've got another camera here that we're going to show a demo here. So stay tuned. Everyone, keep their britches on.
Okay, so like I said, I was looking for another project. I'm a glutton for punishment because there's a lot of work that goes into not only designing it, but then packaging it as a kit and then sourcing all the components and making sure I'm going to be able to source them for a while. So I really wanted to teach myself how to do graphical programming for these microcontrollers. So once again, one thing led to another, and I said, you know what, I found out I know how to do it. So I've been kicking around the idea of designing an SWR Wattmeter kit for probably a year or so. So that started it off. So I needed to do two things. I need, number one, I already mentioned, teach myself how to program the microcontrollers for graphics. And then another one was how do I create a directional coupler, a sensor that would sense your RF for both forward and reflected power. So I searched around, looked at a bunch of circuits that are online, and I settled on I don't even know how to pronounce it correctly, but it's Breune, B-R-E-U-N-E, a Breune coupler that's been around since like the 40s.
Okay.
That's used in pretty much every SWR meter or mid-range SWR meter for HF that's out on the market, including the old Heathkit HM102, a workhorse that Heathkit had out since the late 60s until basically they went out of business. So I adapted that circuit to the modern components and what I could find available in the way of toroidal cores.
Yep.
And I designed the circuit board. Went through like 3 or 4 different prototypes before I arrived on the one that you see here.
Yep.
It's a T50-43 toroid core with 12 turns of number 27 gauge enameled wire, bifiller round. So there's actually two wires that are wound around there in parallel, and then the detection is done by these Schottky diodes, 1 in 5711s. turns the RF into DC voltage basically, and that DC voltage is then fed into the meter itself, where it goes through a two-stage, both forward and reflected have their own two-stage op amp, where the voltage is can be calibrated using potentiometers. And I even added a true peak hold circuit between the two op amps, so that you can switch that in or out, and it'll actually hold your peak power. So like when you're on sideband, you don't see the needle, jumping around, dramatically. It'll actually hold it at its peak.
So that was a discussion I had on a mailing list maybe a year ago on some of these contests. Some other SWR and Wattmeter manufacturers, whenever you're looking at SWR, it's all over whenever you're looking at when you're transmitting SSB, the needles are all over the place.
Correct. And back in the old days, the meter movements, the physical meter movements, had quite a bit of inertia because they were tamped down pretty good with springs. So it didn't move as quickly, but it would still jump around.
Yeah.
And some of the newer meter movements are so sensitive that it just jumps like crazy. So you could really use a peak hold circuitry, which essentially is just an RC circuit, RC time circuit between the two op amps that basically hold the level of that first op amp at the input of the second op amp, and it works really well. I originally tried to do it in firmware, which worked okay, but it wasn't optimal. But the actual physical or the electronic method of peak hold works really well. And it can be switched in or out, so you could choose whether you want a normal or you can choose whether you want peak hold.
I'm looking at the instructions here. These are phenomenal.
Yeah, I won't tell you how long it took me to write the assembly manuals for all the kits. It takes me almost as long to write the manual and edit the manual as it does to actually design the kits themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a confession to make. I didn't put the 4-position switches together because I had Ward did them, because he's got a little bit more time than I do. At the time, he had more time. I'm looking now at the assembly notes, and these are great. I don't think I've seen better assembly notes done, to tell you the truth. I mean, the pictures are great. They're clear. They're concise. You've got, the tips and tricks. I mean, these are great. Wow. Yeah. If you're afraid of putting a kit together, don't be afraid of this one.
Yeah, I really bent over backwards to make these kits for first-time kit builders.
Yeah.
Not only like I said, not only the assembly manuals, but also there are several things I did on the circuit board layout and design. For instance, on some of the bipolar transistors and some of the transistors there in the TO92 cases. Well, those leads are very, very close together, and the standard footprint lends, if you're not experienced on soldering, or if you don't have a very, very small tip, you run the risk of creating solder bridges between those leads. So what I did was created my own footprint for those that spread the leads apart slightly more than the original footprint. That way, you run less risk of solder bridges. So things like that I designed into it. Yeah,
very good. Cool. Wow, you could even here. If you don't know how to solder a BL259, here, I'm going to show you right here. Wow. All right, very good. So there was a couple of questions in the chat. If you got a question for Don. Put question in the front of it, so I can scan the chat very or quickly, because it's going by a little too fast for me. Scott basically asks, "Hey, is there any assembly? Can you purchase it assembled?" And Don, I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, I do have that option. Although after the last couple Hamfests, I'm kind of rethinking that option. But as of right now, I offer I will assemble the kit for you for an $80 assembly charge.
Okay.
It's a 80.
$80.
It takes me about, depending on the kit, it takes me about 4 hours. So I'm not making a lot of money assembling the kits, to tell you the truth.
Let me do the math there.
Yeah. So I was at the Shelby Hamfest. I sold two of the 4-position kits, and they wanted them assembled. So I got back from Shelby on Sunday evening, and then Labor Day, and then the next on Tuesday, I built 2 kits and shipped them out on Tuesday afternoon. And I don't really want to do that anymore. But yeah, I typically sell an assembled kit maybe once a month. So I don't sell a lot of assembly. Typically, people like to build the kits, but I do understand that some folks may not be able to assemble, either because their eyesight may be suffering, like mine's beginning to, as I get in. You can see the over my shoulder, my big magnifying glass that I use.
Oh yeah, I've got one.
Or some maybe some tremors in their hands that they can't get the soldering iron to do what they want it to do. I understand that, and I'm more than happy to build the kit for the nominal fee of $80.
Andy asks, can you ship to the UK?
I can, and I have. Okay. Unfortunately, the UK is going to extract. I think my last customer there, I think he said it was like almost 50 quid. I think maybe it was 20 quid. I can't remember what the import duty is on it. Whatever it is for a $250 kit. I do mark them. I do have to do an import import form. And the price of the kits are $250. I label them as ham radio kits. So in the EU, I think there's the same thing. They do have to pay a VAT.
Yep.
And same in the UK.
Don was not paying attention. He says, question, wait, the 8 position and the 4 position is the same price. Am I reading that right? Don, you need to go back in the stream. We covered that, buddy. Yes. One has a bias T and one doesn't. The 4 position has a bias T, and the 8 position, you have to run the control cable, but it is the same price. Yes. Yeah,
the bias T adds and the components, because it's got some, I won't say they're very expensive, but the RF chokes in there do cost a little bit more money than most of the other components.
Gotcha.
And the additional enclosure adds quite a bit.
And all of the enclosures are powder coated, right? I mean, they're all metal.
Well, the relay boxes and the bias T are not powder coated. They're the relay boxes are cast aluminum, so they don't really need to be powder coated. Plus, they're going to be out in the weather anyway. But the controllers and the SWR meter enclosures they're custom built by a company called Takachi out of Japan. I send them the CAD files, and they do a great job doing the custom milling. They come to me bare metal, and then I send them to a local guy here in Maryland to get them powder coated. He does a very good job for me as well. He's a fellow ham. And then I taught myself how to silk screen. So I do all the screen printing right here in my basement.
Yeah, these are nice enclosures. I mean, they're nice and heavy, and they've got some rubber feet on them. I mean, you press the buttons, and they're not going anywhere. Yeah. Okay. So I think we are going to do a demo. Well, we're going to try and do a demo. The live streaming and demos usually don't work, but we're going to try it.
So let me get over here. I'm going to walk over to the other camera.
Yeah. So let me bring the stream up here. Let's and let me highlight coming on. All right. So, yep, we got the Wattmeter full screen here.
All right, so I've got it on normal mode right now. I'm gonna do some transmit. I'm transmitting into a dummy load, by the way, folks. Actually, I'll point it down real quick, and you can see there's the sensor with my input cable coming from my transmitter on the right, and then the output cable going to my dummy load is on the left. And then you can see the sensor cable that runs up to the meter is
Yep.
the little bluish green cable. By the way, that cable is basically a simple stereo cable. It can be as long as you want it. The kit comes with a 5-foot cable as part of the kit, but you can use any 1/8-inch stereo phono cable extension that you want, as long as it's in place when you do the calibration of the meter.
Gotcha.
All right. So here I'm going to transmit real quick. This is WA4 Mike Charlie Mike. Oh.
It's demo time, boys and girls.
Demo time. Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Test. All right, what's going on? and I was testing it so well earlier.
So now you're getting into the front panel here, and it's
I'm going to change. Testing 1 2. There we go.
There we go. There we go. Okay.
All right, so you can see the needle jumping around. Can you see it? Okay.
Yes, we can. I can see it.
All right. So once again, I'm in a dummy load. This is WA4 Mike Charlie Mike. Now I'm going to change over to the peak hold, and you can see the difference. So just press the front. This is by the way, this is a touch panel.
Yep. And it's a 3-inch 3-inch screen, correct?
3.5 inch.
3.5-inch screen.
So touch the front panel, and I just changed it to peak hold. Now this is WA4 Mike Charlie Mike testing. You see the needle kind of hangs right there at 100 watts.
Yep.
And then you'll see it'll slowly degrade, and that's the typical reaction for any of the meters that have a peak hold circuitry. That's the RC circuit basically being drawn down.
Yep.
All right, so you see the traditional analog meter. I'm going to change over to.
They're asking to be a little bit closer, if you could, Don.
I wish I could.
I don't know if we can, Chris. It's
hang on a second. I'm gonna pull the whole thing closer.
Okay.
If I can.
How about now? Yeah, that looks great.
There we go.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, so I'll give it another quick test. This on peak hold. WA4 Mike Charlie Mike testing.
Yep.
All right, let me change. Let me cycle through the different meter faces. It comes with 3 meter faces. So you touch the settings wheel up there. I can change over to bar graphs. And this is dual bar graphs, both forward and reflected power. And it's got a nice green color on the bar. WA4 Mike Charlie Mike testing.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
And then I just added this with a firmware update about a month and a half ago. Is the 3rd meter face is a full digital. Nice big numbers.
Yep.
I got a bunch of requests for this, and I just went ahead and posted a firmware update on my website with instructions, and the firmware can actually be updated over your USB port from your computer.
Yes. So yeah, I like that that interface too. And yeah, with firmware, literally you could program any type of interface that you wanted, right? I mean, I'm talking about you, Don. I mean,
yeah.
if you wanted to put, like, you know, an elephant and it filled up with pinkness, you know, based on whatever, you could put that together.
I guess within reason, yeah. I mean, I could pretty much, because this is all graphical.
Yeah.
My phone is running out of batteries,
Oh.
so we're about to run out of the demo. Hold on a second. Let me get some power on the phone.
While you're doing that, Carlos asks, how accurate is it?
So it has this Brune this fit this Brune detector that's used in most of these we'll call them mid-range SWR meters. The diodes that are used, those Schottky diodes, the accuracy is based on the linearity of those diodes, and they're pretty linear. So you'll see that if you go look at some of the other watt meters that are out on the market, that they say the accuracy is plus or minus 10% of the full scale value.
Yeah.
And I'm saying the same thing, but in reality, you actually get to go in and calibrate this meter yourself. So you can you calibrate it for the mid scale. So each scale, there are 3 scales, by the way. I failed to mention that. Scales, there's a 0 to 20 scale, a 0 to 200 watt scale, and a 0 to 2000 watt scale. So you're able to calibrate each scale independently of the others. So you can get that accuracy and the assembly manual walks you through the calibration method. So you calibrate it for the middle of the scale, and that way you can get it gets fairly accurate. I've had very good feedback on the accuracy. It's much better than the 10 plus or minus 10%.
Gotcha.
And of course, it also matters on the calibration standard that you use. And I walked through a couple of the options in the assembly manual. It really helps if you've got a good standard to actually measure the output of your transmitter before you calibrate the meter.
Yeah.
Like if you have a friend that has a good bird watt meter or something like that.
Yeah.
Or if you have a decent oscilloscope that will measure your RMS value of your output signal into a 50 ohm load, you can do the math. Volts RMS squared divided by the 50 ohm load, and that'll tell you your output power as well.
Yeah. Couple of questions here for you. One is from Mark. He says, Windows required for firmware. I've only got a MacBook in Linux.
For firmware, you mean for the firmware updates?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think so. I think as long as you can go, because the firmware is updated from a website. It's actually the Adafruit website. They have a very nice website that will update the
yes.
microcontroller that's in this meter is actually an Espressif, made by the Espressif company. It's an ESP32S3. So Adafruit actually has a nice website where you can flash the ESP32 chips, and as long as you can get to that website, and you can create a virtual COM port from the USB, which pretty much Linux and the Macs can do. I'm not sure. Well, I take it back. I'm not sure about Macs whether they have the driver for the ESP32 or not.
So basically, what you're saying is go to the Adafruit website, do some research on if you can see the microprocessor inside of the unit. You can download Don's firmware and flash it via those instructions.
Correct.
Okay. Another question here from Don in 5SKT. He said, could you use different colored numbers? I think he's talking about maybe the firmware that you got, or the face that you've got on here. I guess he wants to know, could you do different colored numbers? I guess,
it's possible.
Yeah.
They're not right now. They're set to black, and there are no settings where you can change that. I have been getting, he's not the first to request that. I went through a couple iterations of colors with my beta testers. I have several hams that were testing this meter face before I released it, and I had like a dark blue, like the blue that you see the rest of the rest of the screen.
Yeah.
I also had red, and then a couple, but by far their favorite was the black numbers that you see, because they stand out very well against the the whiter background. But I mean, if I get enough requests, I can I've got another firmware update that I'm working on. I'm probably be releasing it in another probably another month, and it's going to actually add a screensaver, basically,
Okay.
because some folks just like to look at the meter on using the Windows application, the companion application, and therefore they figure it would be best just to turn the screen off. So I'm going to be adding a screensaver, and if I get enough requests, I could always add a setting for choosing your the color, maybe even the background color, as well as the number colors on here, the foreground colors.
Okay. Hank asked me, where's the node red flow for the meter? I think you are working on the flow. I think that it's not done. Hank, to tell you the truth, I don't know if the community has put together a flow for this, but I know that I think Don is working on one.
Well, I'm not so much working on the flow yet as I'm working on the node for the meter
node.
faces.
Yeah.
Because the flow, I publish the communications protocol just like I do for the antenna switches. So the communications protocol for the for the power output, both forward and reflected, is published. So creating a flow for that would be a fairly straightforward exercise.
Yeah.
The hard part is getting the node for the meter faces, but I believe there is actually a bar graph node available on Node Red, so you could basically gin one up pretty quickly if you just wanted to look at bar graphs.
Yeah.
And feed it the power, and maybe do some scaling and some normalization of the actual power to match the bar graph. I haven't played with it, but I would think it would be fairly trivial.
Another question, Jody. I forgot your name, Jody. He has a suggestion here on the colors. Maybe flash a yellow or red background when the VSWR field on the VSWR field when it starts to rise up.
Yeah, and that's probably going to be added in a later firmware. I don't know if it's going to be in this next one, because that's probably the next highest grossing request that I get is some sort of alarm,
Gotcha.
whether it's changing colors or even sounding a buzzer. Right now, there's no hardware in there right now to sound an alarm, so that would take a major change. But I could certainly do color changes on the SWR readouts to show that you're getting above a certain threshold, and in the settings you would set that whatever that threshold is. It would be user settable.
Yeah, gotcha. We're at the top of the hour. Don, did you have were you able to get the Windows program up and running?
Let me see. I'm having problems with my extension, my USB extensions for this thing. So let me see if it's showing up.
If not, is there a place on the website that I can show the screenshot of the Windows software?
Oh, here we go.
Okay.
Can I?
You can share your screen. Yep. So go down to your control, and somewhere there's a screen sharing button.
let's see, settings.
I think it's one of the buttons.
Oh, here it is.
There you go.
Share screen.
Yep. And then once it'll pop up on my control panel, and then I can bring it into the fold here.
There we go. I'm sharing the meter window itself.
Oh, I'm not seeing it. You probably have to share your whole screen. Oh, hang on. It's trying. Come on.
It says it's sharing a window.
Is it not? It's not going here. Oh, hang on. Here we go.
All right,
got it. There it is.
You got. Awesome. Right. So this is the companion application. It basically controls the meter. Right. So right now I'm seeing the same meter face that I selected on the meter itself. I can actually change that from here. I can go to the settings menu, and you're probably not seeing the settings menu right now because it's a different window.
Right.
But I'll change it to the needle face. And what it does, it sends the request over to the meter to change the meter face. And once that changes, then the communications protocol it sends back, it actually says that I'm now on the analog meter. So now you can see it changed, right? You can click on the peak cold to change it from peak cold to normal from your PC, from the app. And one thing I didn't demonstrate right now on the analog meter, you see it's showing forward power.
Yes.
Well, click down in the reflected power pane anywhere, and it'll change that meter. So now it's showing reflected power. And you'll also notice that the forward and reflected power have different scales. So they're completely independent scales. So right now for reflected power, it's 0 to 20, which sounds appropriate for reflected power, especially since my max power output here is 100 watts, right?
Right.
To change the scale, just click anywhere in the meter face here, and it'll change from 0 to 20 to 0 to 200. Click again, 0 to 2K. Yeah, a lot, and you see one of the bugs in my app. But
and same with the forward power too. You can
same with the forward power. So I go to forward power, and it'll change the scales.
Cool. Very neat. Very neat.
All right.
Cool.
That's about it and this app comes with the meter. It's downloadable from my website. Unfortunately it's only written for Windows. So if you have a Mac or a Raspberry Pi or a Linux machine, you're going to have to wrap a Windows wrapper around it.
Right.
I still haven't taught myself how to do cross-platform programming, but that's on my to-do list. I've always wanted to learn how to do that. But right now it's written in C#, so there's kind of some limitations on some of the platforms, but I should be able to get it cross-platform hopefully before too long.
Carlos asks frequency range. What HF?
HF to 6 meters, yeah, through 6 meters.
6 meters, gotcha. Just wrapping up here. Don's kit is $250. I guarantee you, if you take a look at some of the other meters out there, we've got a couple of meters at the contest station, and they're $600. So, I mean, that's why I bought one, is because I thought it was a very good deal to get a meter this accurate and full legal limit, which is great. Don, how do they order? How do they, the link is in the description below, and it's at wa4mcmkits.com. But what is the procedure of getting a hold of you to actually buy one of your kits?
So on my website, there is on the main menu up at the top menu bar, there is a contact menu over on the far right, and that will take you to a contact form where you can actually check off what you would like to purchase and fill in the information, your name and your name and call sign and mailing address. And then there's a little captcha down at the bottom, because as soon as I posted this thing, I'm getting spam emails all over the place. But and then just send a message. And I usually respond within a couple of hours, or overnight if it comes, after my bedtime. And what I do is my financial services company that I deal with is SWR, which if you've been to any small shops around, you'll be familiar with them, because pretty much all the small shops use SWR, the little point of sale devices. And I can send you a SWR invoice via email that has a link on it that you can go. It'll basically take you to a SWR online payment site that you can provide your credit card information very securely.
Yep.
And once I get the notice that you've made the payment, I ship. If it's by 4 p.m. on a weekday, I can ship that same day. Otherwise, I'll ship it out in the next day's email or UPS, depending on which is the least expensive method. U.S. Postal Service has been very, very good to me. I mean, they've got good pricing. They now have this inexpensive called Ground Advantage, and it's just as fast. I've noticed it's just as fast as their Priority Mail that they had. In fact, I just shipped the 2 that I told you I built and shipped out on Tuesday evening. I just got notice that they received it today, and they were down to North Carolina. So it was a 2-day from Maryland to North Carolina, which is fairly decent.
Another Don says, does Don take PayPal for payment? I think we covered that, SWR, but you can put your credit card into the SWR website. I
used to take PayPal, but PayPal charges too much to sellers. It's almost double the seller fees from SWR, because SWR is essentially a credit card fee, just like most credit card suppliers.
Yep.
It's less expensive.
Wild Hogs and Ham says, will you be out of stock by the morning?
I don't know. I don't know how many people are on here, but I have 8 4-position switches left in stock, and that's it until I get more enclosures in from Takachi. I just put the order in today, so it'll be about a month before I get new enclosures. And I have 9 8-position switches that are ready to ship, but I have enough components for 10 more, and I have 13 watt meters, and enough for 5 more that I can provision pretty quickly. So
we had a max of about 85 people watching. So
okay, well, I'll be ready to ship, and I hope I have enough in stock.
And then we got another question. Ed Cozart wants to know if there's any plans for a VHF UHF version.
Oh, there are. That's another thing. That's another learning curve for me. I need to figure out how to design strip line circuit boards for VHF and UHF sensors, and also the circuitry. I have to go back to the drawing board basically from scratch, but hopefully this winter, when I get downtime from the the Hamfest season, maybe I can work something out and have something ready by Hamvention next year to have a separate VHF, maybe VHF or maybe both VHF UHF sensor.
Gotcha.
I don't know what we'll be able to design. Yeah.
I think Don has ordered one already or asked for, and Arnold says he's asked for a watt meter. So we might have made at least 2 sales tonight.
Oh, I've got Arnold and Don. I have requests, so I will work on those. Unfortunately, believe it or not, SWR is down. They have a worldwide outage of their data center right now.
Oh, wow.
And I've been trying to send an invoice out to a gentleman who wants to buy a 4-position switch, but as of right now, they're still down. Let me. Yeah.
Everything's free tonight.
I may have to go to PayPal. I may have to go back to PayPal, but no, they should be up overnight, hopefully.
Okay.
And I'll be able to get invoices out tomorrow.
Gotcha. All right, let's bring us back to center here. Well, thank you, Don. Anything else you want to say about the switches or the watt meter to the smiling great members of YouTube out there?
I do appreciate everybody listening, and Kyle many thanks to you to give me a forum here.
You're welcome.
Like I said, I don't really advertise these because I'm a one-man shop, and if I really advertised a lot, I just wouldn't be able to support the volume, right? So most of my advertising is done word of mouth, and I do advertise on the QRZ handmade gear forum, and then handing out business cards at Hamfest. I just love going to Hamfest. I love talking to all the guys and gals, answering questions, finding out what people are doing. I just love it. And Kyle, you know that you sit by my booth and I just talk like crazy. So
yeah.
Anyway, I do appreciate it, Kyle, and I appreciate everybody for their questions and for paying attention to this whole coot. So,
are you coming down to Orlando?
I am. I plan on being a Hamcation again. This will be my second year down. So I'll probably be set up at the same spot if I can get it. I like being out in the tailgate areas. So.
Yep, I will be there. I've got plans to spend. Don't tell my employer, but I'm going to spend the whole month of February in Florida, just like last year.
Ah, great.
Don't tell anybody.
I won't tell.
All right, as I tell the whole YouTube community. So, all right, Don. So the link is in the description below if you want to order one of Don's switches or SWR and watt meters. Again, we've got 4 of them. I've got a watt meter here. They're great products. I love them. That it filled a niche that we had, and then whenever you came out with the watt meter, I'm just like, of course I got to have one. Why wouldn't I not have one? So hopefully I'm going to put this thing together, and it's not like somebody's DX Commander that sits in a garage. So it actually has the I peeled the top off of it, so I'm one step closer. So anyway, thanks, Don. Appreciate it. And if you want to stick around after we end the stream, we'll say goodbye. But okay. Yeah, we'll see you in Orlando. And everyone go take a look at wa4mcmkits.com. And if you got any questions for Don, that contact info, if you didn't get your question answered today, click on that contact info and send Don an email.
You can send me a question in that form, and I'll get back to it as soon as I can.
Okay. Thanks, all. Appreciate it. We will set. On Monday, little program note. This coming Monday, we've got Aaron Bowman, W4ARB, on the new CW Operators Roundtable. He is going to be talking about your CW vocabulary and basically head copy. So that is going to be the topic on the new CW Operators Roundtable. So 8 o'clock Central, 9 Eastern. Yep, that's it. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it. 73 all.
Bye, guys.